And welcome back, everyone, to the Christian Patriot Report. And we're going to be talking about the newest hit movie to hit the box office. It's called Sound of Freedom, which I was lucky enough to get a chance to see it. And at the end of this segment, I'll give you my opinion on the movie. But this movie has done amazing at the box office, making, I think at this point, over $100 million at the box office. Absolutely just wreaking havoc on the box office. And a lot of it has to do with just word of mouth from those of us who actually went to go see it, telling others to go see it. But the media in this country has really have a hate relationship with this movie. Because if you don't know what Sound of Freedom is, it is a movie that stars Jim Caviezel, and it deals with the subject of human trafficking, but also child human trafficking. And after seeing this movie, it's a movie that hits like a ton of bricks. It will hit you like you will not be the same going into it as you are coming out. You will be a completely different person because it's very well done, very well acted, and the story moves very well. And you can see, if you know anything about this story, about Tim Ballard, what he was doing down in Colombia and other countries trying to rescue children from sex trafficking. If you know that entire story and you know what Tim Ballard had to do, the movie does a very good job of telling that story, telling Tim Ballard's story. And Jim Caviezel does an amazing job acting as Tim Ballard, playing the character playing Tim Ballard in this movie called Sound of Freedom. But the media, they've been telling things like this. Just listen to how the media reacts to this movie doing so well.
Sound of Freedom. Why is there even a controversy around this movie? Now, criticism of the movie effectively says that it dramatizes the problem of child sex trafficking globally and feeds QAnon conspiracies by validating it as a reality. They do acknowledge, of course, that child sex trafficking is real, but that the idea of that elites participating in it is ridiculous. Well, perhaps they have not heard of Epstein's Island, but in my opinion, you do not have to be a crazy person to believe child sex trafficking is a problem. I particularly found it funny that Rolling Stone described the movie as the dream of boomer dads and described the plot as some sort of white savior complex, considering that the current data released so far indicates ticket buyers to this film are, quote, predominantly female, and that a full 1/3 of the audience so far is Hispanic. I actually think this demographic validates something important about the film. The large Hispanic audience from the film may even have personal experience with this issue, considering that Latin America remains one of the global hotspots of child trafficking today.
So the media is absolutely just pulling their hair out, because one of the things that this movie does say is that America is the biggest buyer of child human trafficking. There are so many children that come into this country for the sole purpose of being a sex slave. And it's tragic to think that America is the biggest buyer of child sex slaves. It makes you sick. It makes your skin crawl. But at least there is some good coming out, because this movie does bring awareness. And because this movie is out, many other groups are starting to gain a lot of traction in order to get the word out that what you can do in order to try to stop child human trafficking and sex slave trafficking, what you can do. And check this out. Check this video out and listen to what one group, which is called Set Free, what they're doing and exactly what they have been doing as an organization. Check this out.
The movie Sound of Freedom is making waves at the box office, and now a local group is using it as a platform for the work they do across the upstate. Last night, the group Set Free Alliance played a screening of the movie at Camelot Cinemas in Greenville. The movie draws a lot of attention to child sex trafficking and the growing crisis around the world and even close to home. Just a week before the movie came out, Set Free rescued more than 7,600 kids from 17 different South Asian mines. And since 2012, they've rescued more than 80,000 children.
Some people don't know how big of a problem child slavery and human trafficking is, and so I'm really hoping that by broadening the awareness, it will get more people involved to want to make a difference to stop this from happening.
Well, the Set Free organization was founded by a man in Greer. In the meantime, the movie Sound of Freedom is playing in theaters across the upstate.
So you would think that there would be bipartisan support for this. You would think that Democrat politicians would stand shoulder to shoulder with us. But that's not happening. That's not what's going on. I mean, if you actually listen to what Tim Ballard, who has been doing interviews and actually has his own podcast where he talks about the actual story that the Sound of Freedom is based on, he's been doing a lot of interviews. Now listen to this video of what Tim Ballard said on really the dire warning of what the heck's going on. And, of course, tying it into the whole transgender ideology that's going on in America and throughout the world. Check this out.
Just yesterday, 2 of the guys were convicted in Ecuador because it led us to Ecuador, a child sex hotel, these pedophiles from Holland and set up. But we'll get into that another time, okay? But the point I'm making is I had to study their literature. This was a political platform. This was a political party. And what I started recognizing is I named them I call it the pedophile network doctrines. Okay, yeah. It's like they include things like separate children from parents because parents are a bad influence. The state knows best. Sexualize kids. Let them see pornography. 2.
Karl Marx.
3. Take God out of education because that just gets in the way. And kids consent. Children can consent to anything. At 12 years old, they should be able to vote. They should be able to do anything. Now, what am I saying here? My stomach is getting sick as I'm reading this. I read this every day. It's the woke left agenda. I'm not saying that they're colluding or talking. It doesn't matter. It's the same dark source. But they are pedophiles are sitting back right now going, we've been pushing this agenda for decades. And now we don't have to push anymore because the left is taking care of it for us in America. In America. And this whole trans voice on children. You know, again, I'm libertarian. Adults, do what you want. I'll fight for your right to do whatever you want. Okay, in terms of adult. I'm talking about children. And what they're saying is children can consent to having their bodies filled with a chemical that will destroy the reproductive system. They can consent to ripping apart their genitalia. Like, this is insanity.
You listen to what Tim Ballard had to say about the whole transgender ideology. And you know what? You hear people like President Biden, Vice President Harris going around saying in campaign speeches that our children are not our own. In fact, our children belong to the so-called village. That it takes a village to raise a child. You heard Hillary Clinton say that when she campaigned for president back in 2016. And it's that idea that our children don't belong to us? No. Sorry, that's not happening. Our children do belong to us. And you would think that this issue of not just human trafficking, but just child human trafficking, you would think that would gain bipartisan support. That you would think Republicans, conservatives, Democrats, liberals, heck, socialists, you think they would all see this as being wrong. But the Democrats don't. They have no problem. As a matter of fact, just a couple of weeks ago, I believe it was the state legislature of the state of California voted. They had a bill that was going through, and the bill basically would, if it passed, and I guess if the Governor Newsom signed it, it would deem those people who were charged with human trafficking would then be charged with a felony. You would think a bill like that would be able to get bipartisan support from both Republicans and Democrats, and it would have no issue passing. Because you would think that if you are someone who's a human trafficker, especially a child human trafficker, don't you think you should be charged with a felony? Don't you think that that crime should be a felony? But that bill in the state of California got voted down. And it got voted down by mostly Democrats. Because unfortunately in the state of California, it's run by Democrats. So more Democrat politicians voted to not allow that crime of being charged as a human trafficker to be a felony. They feel, no, that's excessive. And you know what else? Ever since Tim Ballard, who has his own podcast called the Tim Ballard Podcast, ever since he interviewed President Donald Trump, now it just seems like, well, Democrats is just against it. Whatever Donald Trump or Republicans are for, whether it's human trafficking or child human trafficking, they take the opposite stance on it. Which should tell you all you need to know about the Democrat Party. You would think that this issue, human trafficking, not just that, but child human trafficking, you would think that's all wrong. And you would think, as a liberal Democrat, don't you see that that could be wrong? Don't you feel that that could be wrong? What would happen? You know what? Let me ask you this. And I'm not talking to all the liberal Democrats who are going to see this. What happened? What would happen if your child disappeared? Just like this in this movie, Sound of Freedom. These two children were taken. Now, granted, in the movie, and I'm not going to give away the plot because I honestly think you should go see this movie, a father takes his two children to this, I guess he believes that it's like a talent agency where his children are going to get a chance to possibly be in movies or possibly be whatever. They basically sell him a bill of goods. Bring your child here at a certain time, your children. We will train them in order to become actors or whatever the scam was. Come back at a certain time and pick up your kids. Well, when he comes back, there's nobody there. What would happen if, let's just say, liberal Democrats, you take your child to a park. Your child is playing, and all of a sudden you get on your phone because you're bored. You're sitting on a park bench. You're playing on your phone. You look up, and you notice your child's not there. You try to find your child. They're not there. And they're not there because someone took your child. And maybe maybe there's some parks that have cameras. So you know what? When the police investigation starts, they actually show who takes your child. And they can maybe zoom the camera in so they can see what this person looks like. This person who took your child and placed them as a human trafficker to become a sex slave. They sold your child into that. What would you want done to that person? If that person was then later caught, what would you want them to be charged with? A misdemeanor or a felony? I know as a concerned father, I'd want them to get not only a felony, I would want them to get the book thrown at them, to serve as much time in prison. And as a former CO in the state of New York, I know what would happen to someone who's a human trafficker. Not only that, but a child human trafficker, especially if they were a pedophile, which is most of the traffickers out there turn out to be pedophiles themselves. What would you want done to these people? What would you want done? How much time would you want them to serve, especially if your child never is found Or if they do find them, your child is dead because they were drugged with, or they died because of an overdose and they were sexually abused. What would you want done to the people that were responsible for that? I think you would want them to serve the rest of their lives in prison, behind bars. I think you would want them to have the book thrown at them. That's why I don't understand why is there not bipartisan support in order to have stricter laws on the book for people who are not only being human traffickers, but child human traffickers. I never thought I'd say or see the day where I would say the Democrat Party is pro-human trafficking and pro-child sex slave trafficking. Never thought I'd see the day. That's your party, Democrats. Now, I do know there's a conspiracy theory going out there where people are like, you know what, I don't trust people in the government to actually come up with a solution to fix this problem, because that was one of the things. After watching this movie, my wife and I had a conversation. What do you think should be done about something like this? And honestly, I said, unless we have stricter laws, really, these are the things, and even Tim Ballard says himself, these are the things that need to be done. We need to have stricter laws on our books where we throw the book at these people. We need to enforce our immigration laws. But more importantly, we need to have a border wall. Not for some political reason. The only reason that Tim Ballard wants a border wall is because if we make it harder for us to just be able to, or make it harder for the drug cartels or any of the human traffickers just be able to cross the border into America, where if we make it harder because we have a wall, so to speak, it forces them to go into a port of entry. That's when we can save some of these kids. Because as he said, that's in the movie, he said that's how they saved one of the kids. This human trafficker had no choice but to take this child that he abducted, or they abducted, and he was going to traffic them across the border into America for whatever reason, to give to somebody, who knows what it was. But Tim Ballard said the only reason this person, and this really happened in real life, had to take them to a port of entry is because that was the only way, or one of the only ways, to get that kid into America. And by sending them through the port of entry, we have trained special agents who knew the kid because they saw photos of this kid and knew what to look for. And that's how they saved this kid. So you would think Democrats would then want to have a border wall in order to save some of these kids. It's not about immigration. It's not about a political thing. It's about saving kids. So the question is, what are you going to do in order to stop this from happening? Sure, go out and see this movie, Sound of Freedom. I highly recommend it. I do recommend that you go see this movie as long as it's still in theaters. Go to, I think it's angel.com // Sound of Freedom. You can buy tickets there. You can go see tickets or see where it's playing. If it's playing near you, go see it. I highly recommend you go see this movie. And then I want you to go call your congressmen, your senators, your governors, and your representatives, and ask them, what are they doing in order to fix this problem? And I know there's a conspiracy theory where, yeah, I don't want this to happen either, where the solution is everybody who comes through the border, we're going to tag them, microchip them. We're going to do something. And many people believe that will be the catalyst, Because if they tag these kids, then we know we can track them. Well, we don't have to do that. That I know that's what most people are fearing because of what that implies. And I can get into it more, but honestly, I just know that I'm rambling at this point. The point is, there should be bipartisan support to end human trafficking. And I would think that you Democrats would be in on that, would have no problem standing side by side with us in order to come up with a solution to fix this. But you don't. And as long as you show that you are not going to help solve this problem, I honestly believe you should never vote Democrat. This is another reason why you should never vote Democrat for any reason. Because they do not want to protect not only these kids, but protect America and protect. Really what they want to do is protect their backside. Protect their ideology, that is liberalism. And that should tell you that their ideology has no problem with child human trafficking, with child human sex slaves. They have no problem with any of that. And you should never vote for any politician or anybody in a party that has no problem with those things and fights viciously against those things. So you know what? You Democrats never thought I'd see the day where you'd be pro-human trafficking. If you would like to watch full episodes of the Christian Patriot Report, go check out our Rumble channel. The link to that channel is in the description below.